Today, I'd like to talk about what happens when you believe a lie. And really, uh, the title "Truth or Consequences" is indicative of the fact that when you follow the truth and you believe the truth, there are blessings that come from that. But when you deal with lies, you wind up with incredible problems, complex problems. Sir Walter Scott said something often attributed to William Shakespeare. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. It becomes very complex, very difficult, lie upon lie upon lie upon lie, and unraveling it creates even more difficulties. But it all goes back to the original lie. I'm not sure if you've thought about it this way, but the source of all of our problems is a lie that was told by Satan to Adam and Eve, that Adam and Eve then believed. Our entire universe has been corrupted by a lie that was believed by those who heard it. Let me read just from Genesis 3 1 to 6. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? To the serpent, we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. You will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. And then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. There's an important thing here that is quite often missed. The sin that they committed began not by eating the fruit, which may have been an apple. We don't know what it was. It was a fruit. It's not identified. It actually begins when she questions God's word. So Satan says, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? And then she responded, well, we can eat from any of the trees, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die. Well, we don't know if he said that last, you must not touch it or you will die. God may have said that. It's not recorded. We're just given a few seconds or perhaps less than a minute or so of the conversation that God had between Adam and Eve. And so he could have said that. So I don't make much of that. But listen to what Satan says. He questions God's word very directly. You will not certainly die. What Satan is saying is, God is lying to you. I am telling you the truth. And he then gives an explanation as to why God is lying. God has motives that are not ones that favor you, they favor him. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Okay, and so their sin was believing a lie rather than the truth. Their sin was believing that God himself had lied to them. And then having concluded that the truth was the fruit was be good for them, just as Satan had said, and that it was not going to be bad for them as God had said to eat it, they ate. Both Adam and Eve ate. And then it says, then the eyes of both of them were opened. There were consequences, and they were not good consequences when they believed the lie. They realized they were naked. They sewed fig leaves together and they made coverings for themselves. And in that instant in time, they went from being immortal beings to being mortal beings. They died in that sense, and they became beings who would die. Uh, they gave up more than they could have ever imagined, certainly more than they ever understood, because they believed a lie rather than the truth. They doubted the word of God. Well, truth is the antidote to lies. Jesus was speaking, and you see in the picture on the right an attempt to depict the fact that he was speaking to Pharisees. He wasn't speaking to his disciples. He was speaking to Pharisees. Oh, his disciples may have been there, but his message was to them. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you, and that was some percentage of the Jews who were there, if you hold to my teaching, and better translation would be abide in my word, remain in my word, you are really my disciples. So imagine, so there's a crowd of people, a lot of Pharisees, a few disciples. The disciples are Jews. To those who have decided to follow him, he says, look, you've got to stick with it. This is not a one-time thing. This is not short-term. If you stick with it, stay with me, abide in my word, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Free from this religious system, free from really being a victim of the problems of life, free in all senses. And they answered him, and now this is the Pharisees responding, we are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free? And Jesus replied, very truly, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. And now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. And then he continues on to say, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So the problem is a lie leads to slavery. We've seen it in the human condition when you go back to Adam and Eve and what has happened. He was dealing with exactly that with the Jews. We become slaves to the sin. Well, some people don't want the truth because the truth does have consequences, just as lies have consequences. I would have liked to have shown you the little clip and decided that I probably wouldn't do that just in case there were technical challenges, but I'm sure you've seen it. From A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson is Jessup, and Tom Cruise is questioning him and saying, look, we just want the truth. And Nicholson says, you can't handle the truth. You can't handle it. You really don't want it. A critical time in that movie, and it is unfortunately the case that many people don't want to know the truth. They don't want to know. They're afraid to know in many cases. And some people hide the truth. There is now something called the narrative. It used to be that the media would give you the news. They would give you the facts. Now, some of the facts may have been left out and other ones added in. And there might have been a little bit of shading of the truth. There might have been a discussion about it, but things were not fabricated. And they started with the goal of finding the truth. College, basically higher education generally, used to be a quest for the truth. Now it's all about the narrative. So that those who are speaking, those who are writing, begin with a narrative. And they know what the narrative is. And then they embrace that narrative, which really is ultimately flowing from their worldview, and determine what message needs to be given and what the specific outcomes are that they would like to see. And then only those items that fit the narrative get presented. So either things are left out, they're omitted, or they're ridiculed, or they're distorted. And so it makes it very, very difficult to know what the truth is. because people are very good, just as Satan was, at lying. And plus, if you have a situation where somebody has a worldview that is compatible, then what they hear just reinforces their worldview. They don't want to hear the things that do not reinforce their worldview. And it's how we're made. Um, you have a worldview, you hear something that doesn't fit that, you don't pass it on. You hear something or you see something on social media or you get an email and it reinforces your worldview, you pass it on to other people. And so it becomes very difficult to track down the truth in all of this. We are fallen beings, and although we seek the truth, quite often we arrive at something we think is truth before we really discover it's a lie. Okay, and so what is worldview? Because worldview seems to be shaping this. Well, we love stories, movies, news. News is stories. Every day there is another chapter in the story, and there are any number of different stories. Books, clearly, people read books because of the stories. Gossip is a story. These are all stories. There are several guys on today who years back were involved in a study that we did, which was about teaching as Jesus taught. Well, Jesus communicated with stories. And if you hear a message, you remember the stories that were told for a very long time. You may not remember the points of the message or even any of the other things that a pastor may have said, but you remember the stories. We're designed for stories. The Bible itself is one long story. How Adam and Eve sinned on our behalf and how God has spent all the time since and will continue to until Jesus returns, restore and rebuild and remake the entire creation, including us, into what he wants it to be. And so worldview is the master story that puts everything into context. So the Christian worldview you're quite familiar with. God created a perfect universe, giving man free will. Man believed Satan's lie, disobeyed God, fractured himself, all his descendants, and the universe with him. And then God remakes the broken universe and its inhabitants by redeeming us individually by his grace through faith in the atoning work of his Son. And then God ultimately will restore us and the creation, and he promotes us to the status of being his children. So when you read the Bible as a story, you see paradise lost in Genesis, and then you see it restored in Revelation. You see humanity lost in Genesis and then restored in Revelation. And in between, you see this battle between truth and lie, between God and Satan, with human beings being the battlefield. The battlefield is in our mind and in our hearts. Tim Keller says only the Christian worldview locates the problem with the world, not in any part of the world or in any particular group of people, but in sin itself, which results in our loss of our relationship with God. And it locates the solution in God's grace, our restoration of a relationship with God through the work of Christ. Then there's the socialist worldview, which is a worldview that many people have embraced today. It is a siren song that's very appealing. And the base message is that money and wealth have been distributed unequally. God, if there is a God, got it wrong. And that base sentiment is one of the key reasons that the majority of socialists are not believers in God. Because this creation that we have here would seem to indicate that God is very unfair. Well, obviously, as you read the scriptures, you understand far more about this. And you understand that there is inequality, and there always will be, because this is a fallen universe. And that the problems have not come because of God. The problem have come because we ultimately believed a lie, and because there is a liar. And there is someone who seeks to destroy us, and there is someone who fights against God. Humans who understand this, who believe in socialism, must take power and use that power to redistribute the wealth equitably. And so, in essence, people who understand, who have this enlightenment, must correct what God cannot. Now, communism goes one step further, and so I'm really bringing things down to their core essence. And communist goes one step further because he said it's not about redistributing equally. Rather, Marx says the theory of communism may be summed up in this single sentence: the abolition of private property. If there is no private property, then there is no problem. Nobody owns anything. We are all equal. Well, we see in our time the war of the worldviews played out on the internet, played out in the media generally, played out in our neighborhoods. Globalist versus nationalist, freedom of speech versus freedom from being offended. There are those who are for and those who are against abortion. There are those who believe and those who doubt that humans can fix the climate. There are those who believe that we're going through climate change caused by human beings and those who do not. And then, of course, progressive versus conservative, very different worldviews. Well, people who hold differing worldviews generally hold them because they are basing those worldviews on a different set of facts, which causes them to see a very different master story. I firmly believe that most people make rational decisions based on the facts that they have. Given good facts, they will make good decisions. Satan came and enticed Eve with a bad fact. The core fact being God has lied. He does not have your best interest at heart. She believed it. Mark Twain said something that takes it a step further and makes it even clearer, and I believe is quite true. The trouble with the world is not that people know too little, but that they know so many things that ain't so. Our history books have been rewritten, and a lot of our kids know things that ain't so. We see censorship on social media, and so people know things that ain't so. And as we look around, you can see people, you talk with them, and they're hardened in their views. And you think to yourself, why would somebody say that? Or why would they think that? Well, it's because they know things that just ain't so. And so what's critical then is tracking down the truth. So how can we determine what is true? Well, Twitter, Facebook, Google, many people go to these sources and try to determine from them what is true. They'll Google something. What does Google say? What does Wikipedia say? Wikipedia just about 2 weeks back announced a clear bias in the way that they would do things. Well, these organizations control the facts. Well, Adam and Eve fell because they believed a lie. Every day we are getting competing facts, and I would suggest to you we see many lies because the facts compete. They can't both be true. Two equally opposite things cannot be true. And these facts are presented in ever more convincing ways. The narratives have been refined, well organized, and presented by multiple sources. And we get lie upon lie. You undoubtedly have heard the lie over and over again about Charlottesville and President Trump saying that the neo-Nazis were fine people. Well, I never said that. You know, if you read the entire text of what he said, or if you see it on video, you discover that immediately after he said there are fine people on both sides, he made it very clear that he was not talking about the neo-Nazis or any of the other groups that were indeed racist. But that portion is left off because it doesn't fit the narrative. We see doctored videos like that. we see now the beginning of something called deep fakes. So you can go to a video and you look at the video, and anyone can be presented as saying anything, and it looks real. It has been a computer generated video that looks as real as the pictures we've seen of one another this morning on Zoom. And then you also have gaslighting. And in gaslighting, it's not that what you're seeing is manipulated. Rather, you're being told that you're not seeing what you are clearly seeing. The phrase goes back to a movie in the 1930s where a man was trying to convince his wife that she was crazy and actually trying to drive her crazy. And he kept dimming the gas lights just a little bit every day. And when she would complain about the lights being dim, he would say, they're not dim. They're not dim. It's all in your mind. Gaslighting. Nothing to see here. Just keep moving. Well, who do you trust to tell you the truth? And how do you know what we know? That's really the base question. How do you know what you know? I mean, the area of study would be epistemology, trying to figure out how you know what you know. How do you get knowledge? Do you believe your teachers? Well, listen, there are many kids who go off to college and they have one worldview. They listen to their teachers and they wind up with a very different worldview. Do you believe your parents? Well, your parents may or may not be people who know and communicate the truth. How about friends or the media, social media? Oh, the fact checkers. We can go to the fact checkers. Well named, but a gross misnomer. Fake news now is a new buzzword in the past few years. Well, how do most people check out fake news? Well, they may go to Google first and take a look, and then they go to Snopes, Snopes.com. And so if you go to the Snopes.com website, you'll read this. Welcome to Snopes.com, the definitive internet reference source for urban legends, folklore, myths, rumors, and misinformation. Barbara and David Mickelson, so trusted is Snopes that it has helped Facebook to determine and label fake news since 2016. And they've done this with the help of ABC News and PolitiFact. And there are other ones out there, factcheck.org and the rest. Well, why don't we fact check the fact checkers? So let's fact check Snopes. And I should recommend to you that you fact check the other ones as well. I think you'll be quite surprised. So what is Snopes' worldview? Well, the Daily Mail reports that the CEO of Snopes, David Mickelson, was at that time embroiled in a vicious legal battle with his former wife and Snopes co-founder, Barbara Mickelson. The couple divorced sometime around 2014. Barbara Mickelson claims that David embezzled $98,000 and spent it on prostitutes. Now, according to the Daily Mail, David has remarried since his divorce from Barbara, and his current wife, Eliza Young, works at Snopes. But previously, she had a very lengthy career as an escort and adult film star working under the name Erin O'Brien. Now, Mickelson has previously stated that Snopes does not take any political positions whatsoever. His current wife, however, has a history in politics. The Daily Mail reports that Young ran for U.S. Congress in Hawaii on the Libertarian ticket. In 2004, during which time she distributed cards that read, "Redefeat Bush," and condoms with the words, "Don't get screwed again," printed on the wrapping. You can't make this stuff up. On her campaign website, she outright stated, let's face it, I'm an unlikely candidate. I fully admit that I'm a courtesan. If you were writing a book, you would say, no, nobody would believe this. Okay, and this is who people are going to check the facts. Well, speaking to the Daily Mail, David Mickelson stated that Snopes did not have a standardized procedure for fact checking. In other words, one person checking the fact about one story at Snopes might do things very differently from someone else. And he says, since the nature of this material can vary widely. When asked about the requirements for becoming an employee at Snopes, Mickelson stated, Quote, accordingly, our editorial staff is drawn from diverse backgrounds. Some of them have degrees and or professional experience in journalism, and some of them don't, unquote. Also, according to the Daily Mail, another one of Snopes' lead fact checkers has a history of sex blogging, writing under the pseudonym Vice Vixen. Are you amazed? And people are trusting Snopes? I could go on, but I thought this would give you enough information for you to realize the fact checkers are not checking facts. They are, in large part, reinforcing particular worldviews. Well, how do you arrive at a worldview? Who do you trust? Well, you know, as we said before, you might trust your parents, or it may be someone you admire and emulate, or it might be a particular network, CNN, NBC, Fox News, now Newsmax. And if you tell me who you have listened to regularly, I suspect that I and you can guess what your worldview is, because your worldview is shaped by the information that you have accepted as factual. But all of these have some bias. We saw it on election night. Fox News called Arizona almost immediately. And they waited until 100% of the vote was in before calling Florida. Didn't that seem strange? Well, they have a bias. Vance Packard wrote about bias and how bias is created, as well as how worldview is shaped, when he wrote the book The Hidden Persuaders back in 1957. And he was exploring there the use of consumer motivational research and various other psychological techniques that were used to shape people's thoughts and desires. And these techniques were used by advertisers, news media, politicians, to manipulate expectations and induce desire for particular products and politicians. So the goal was to make you dissatisfied so you will seek whatever they are selling. Think about this. 200 years ago, people did not worry about buying underarm deodorant. It was just part of life. And that was a time when people didn't even necessarily take one shower a day or one bath a day. It might have been a bath once a week on bath night, usually Saturday night. It's just the way life was. Nobody was going out to buy underarm deodorant. So to sell underarm deodorant, the manufacturers had to convince people that this was bad. Or perhaps your laundry is not white enough. You're not going to change detergents unless you're dissatisfied with the detergent you're using. Your teeth are not white enough. You're not going to change toothpaste unless you're dissatisfied with the way that your teeth look. Every now and then I'll run into somebody whose teeth have been bleached so much that it seems unreal. Well, likewise, the goal in a political environment is to convince you that you need to be unhappy. Saul Alinsky, there are many on the progressive side who are disciples of Saul Alinsky, says that a community organizer, who might also go by the name of revolutionary activist, and he gives a few other names, he said his first goal is to make people dissatisfied and then to fan the flames of latent hostility. And he went on to say, it is not do the ends justify the means, but rather does this particular end justify this particular means? And he speaks about the necessity to lie and to manipulate and to do other things in order to make people believe and conform to the narrative. Are we seeing some of this today? I would suggest to you that we are. People are dissatisfied and even rioting in the streets. And you say, well, why are they doing that? Well, they have believed a narrative. They have come to a different conclusion on the source of truth. Well, in terms of creating the narrative, the person or media needs to include or exclude news so as to advance the narrative. And the goal is to make you dissatisfied and even disgusted with one party or agenda, drawing you to embrace a different one. Blatant lies are now okay as long as no one is allowed to question them. And if they're not allowed to question them for a long enough period of time, then it generally becomes accepted that that is the truth. George Orwell wrote this, very prophetic: in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Well, how do you find the truth? Well, there's the necessity of corroboration. God makes it clear to Moses that the truth is established on the testimony of two or more eyewitnesses. If you only have one, you can't take any action based on that. You don't have any confirmation. It used to be that all media reports required at least the appearance of corroboration. You may remember during the Watergate scandal, if you're old enough, that anything that was released was required to have some corroboration. You may recall when major newspapers made sure that they had corroboration before anything was written. Well, that is no longer the case. And those who did not seek to have facts corroborated or events corroborated, that was referred to as yellow journalism, meaning not quite as trustworthy. And this was not to be corroboration of opinion or saying somebody else did the same thing and therefore that corroborates, or this person did that in another situation and therefore that corroborates, but of actual historical events that have been viewed by multiple individuals. The Western emphasis is it a fact? The Eastern emphasis is, does it work? And we see that people are accepting facts that don't work. If you look at socialism and you investigate how it has worked in other societies, we've discovered not very well, not very well. But if the narrative is it's a good thing, then those facts of what has been done in other societies wind up being hidden from the general populace. And then beyond that, these things are spiritually discerned. You have to have a spirit that wants to know the truth. Jesus repeats this over and over in the Gospels. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. There are people who have physical ears, but they really don't want to hear, and so they don't. In some cases, they may even actually cover their ears. You have to want to know the truth. And ultimately, the best way to do that is ask God for guidance. In James, it's clear. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Now, wisdom and knowledge are two different things. Knowledge is what are the facts. Wisdom is what do you do with those facts? What action do you take or not take? It is knowing what to do in any situation. But first, ideally, you would know the facts. Well, God can even grant you wisdom without you knowing the facts. He can guide you to do the right thing regardless. Nonetheless, we should seek out the truth. And when you ask, he says, don't doubt, just believe. You must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. And it's really then not asking God to give you wisdom, but you're asking for God's opinion to see whether or not you want to agree with it. It's as if you're saying, I want to know God's will so I can decide whether or not I want to do it. Well, that person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. And you've seen the anxiety that comes, perhaps you've even known it yourself, where you're torn. Do I go this way? Do I go that way? And you're getting advice and you're not sure what to believe. So ultimately, who do you trust is critical. As with Adam and Eve, Satan tells us lies, master lies, incredible narratives, unbelievably complex worldviews. It's our responsibility to seek out the truth and not succumb to the lies. And then, knowing the truth, act accordingly. Resist the devil, he will flee from you, we're told. And we're told even more, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. Our weapon is the sword of the Spirit, the Word of God. Spend time studying God's Word. Spend time seeking the truth in God's Word. David wrote and said, "Thy word have I hid in my heart that I might not sin against you." And victory then ultimately comes as we go to God in prayer. These are things that you know and I know. And so it's just an encouragement to do what we already know. And God then is writing his story in your life, in your family, and I believe very much in our country. This is a time, clearly, we need to be praying for our nation. And we need to pray that people will know the truth. You shall know the truth, Jesus says, and the truth will set you free. And he says, ultimately, I am the way and the truth and the life. And the question now is not really who is president, who will run the Senate. It is none of those things. It is not with regards to any of the political elements. It is, will the people of this nation turn and serve the Lord? Will they seek out his face? It is my belief that we have had a great many who have done exactly that. And I believe that they have done it from the deepest place in their heart and with earnestness of will. And therefore, I am trusting and believing that God will guide us in the days ahead, and we will see revelations from God. I earnestly pray that this will be the case. Thank you very much.